The first signs of chaos erupted during Atlanta's evening rush hour, when commuters packed into subway cars and gridlocked streets had nowhere to run. Marcus Rodriguez adjusted his rearview mirror and checked his radio one more time as he completed his security patrol around the CDC complex, the familiar routine of his evening shift suddenly shattered by distant screams echoing through the downtown corridors. A former Marine sergeant who had transitioned to civilian security work after his deployment overseas, Marcus possessed the kind of situational awareness that made him notice when something wasn't right, and tonight, everything felt wrong. The emergency radio crackled to life with frantic reports of violent attacks across multiple city blocks, each incident more bizarre than the last, with witnesses describing people attacking strangers with animalistic fury before disappearing into the growing darkness. 3 floors above in her laboratory, Dr. Emma Thompson pushed her glasses up her nose and stared at the computer screen displaying real-time emergency alerts flooding the CDC's monitoring systems, each red dot representing another incident of unexplained violence spreading across the metropolitan area like wildfire. Her expertise in infectious diseases immediately triggered alarm bells as she recognized patterns that defied random occurrence. The simultaneous timing across diverse neighborhoods suggested coordinated release points rather than natural transmission, a possibility too terrifying to fully comprehend. Meanwhile, 17-year-old Jake Williams was live streaming from his apartment balcony to his modest following of gaming enthusiasts when his camera captured something that would haunt him forever: his elderly neighbor Mrs. Patterson stumbling through the courtyard below, her movements jerky and unnatural, before she suddenly attacked a jogger with such savage intensity that Jake dropped his phone and stumbled backward into his apartment. The infection spread with a speed that defied everything medical science understood about disease transmission, transforming bustling neighborhoods into silent killing fields within mere hours, the only sounds being breaking glass, car alarms, and the inhuman growls of creatures that had once been human beings. Emergency services found themselves completely overwhelmed as 911 operators fielded thousands of calls reporting attacks, missing persons, and sightings of people who seemed to have lost every trace of their humanity, their behavior becoming increasingly coordinated and predatory as night fell across the city. At Atlanta General Hospital, Rebecca Foster had worked night shifts for 15 years and thought she had seen every kind of trauma imaginable, but nothing prepared her for the bite victims who arrived in wave after wave, dying from their wounds within minutes before reanimating into something that no longer resembled the patients she had sworn to heal. Detective Daniel Mitchell was investigating what initially appeared to be isolated incidents of extreme violence when his partner Officer Rodriguez called for backup at what seemed like a simple domestic disturbance, only to have Daniel arrive to find his longtime colleague and friend being torn apart by what had once been the homeowner, now transformed into a snarling predator that showed no recognition or mercy. The city's power grid began failing as infected individuals somehow understood to target infrastructure, plunging entire districts into darkness while fires started by overturned vehicles and damaged gas lines created an orange glow that painted the night sky with apocalyptic light. Tyler Brooks was operating a crane on a downtown construction site when he watched the city's familiar skyline transform before his eyes, building lights flickering out in systematic patterns while emergency vehicle sirens wailed through streets increasingly filled with abandoned cars and running figures. His vantage point 50 feet above street level gave him a terrifying overview of the chaos unfolding below, as groups of infected individuals moved through the streets with purpose that suggested retained intelligence despite their transformed state. At Georgia Tech, Ashley Coleman had been studying late in the library when the first screams echoed across campus, initially dismissed as typical college Friday night revelry until shadows began moving past the windows with movements too erratic and purposeful to be celebrating students. She barricaded herself behind overturned tables as the sounds outside grew more violent and distinctly inhuman, her psychology textbooks offering no framework for understanding the primal terror that seemed to be consuming her fellow students. The infected demonstrated abilities that challenged every assumption about mindless zombies, retaining enough cognitive function to open doors, operate simple mechanisms, and hunt in coordinated packs that suggested some form of collective intelligence or external control. Social media feeds filled with shaky phone footage showing the progression of normal people into aggressive predators, the transformation appearing to occur within minutes of exposure through bites or contact with infected bodily fluids. Radio transmissions intercepted by emergency services revealed that the outbreak was not confined to Atlanta, with similar incidents being reported simultaneously in major cities across the United States and potentially worldwide, suggesting a coordinated attack of unprecedented scale and sophistication. As the night deepened, survivors began to realize that their familiar world had ended forever, replaced by a landscape where human beings had become both the most dangerous predators and the most precious resource, with each person's survival depending on their ability to adapt quickly to rules that prioritize strength, cunning, and the willingness to make impossible choices in the name of staying alive. Dawn broke over Atlanta with an eerie silence that made Marcus Rodriguez's military training scream warnings in his head as he navigated the CDC's emergency stairwells, leading a small group of terrified employees toward what he hoped would be safety. The building's backup power cast flickering shadows on the walls while Dr. Emma Thompson clutched her laptop bag containing months of research data, her scientific mind still struggling to process the evidence suggesting that last night's outbreak might have involved engineered biological weapons rather than natural disease transmission. Behind them, Jake Williams moved with the nervous energy of someone whose entire world had been redefined in a single night, his smartphone buzzing constantly with social media alerts and emergency broadcasts as he worked to create a real-time digital map of Atlanta's rapidly changing landscape of safe zones and infected territories. The group's first direct encounter with the infected came when they reached the parking garage, where Marcus held up his hand for silence before carefully peering around a concrete pillar to observe three figures standing motionlessly near the exit ramp. What he saw challenged every assumption about mindless zombie behavior. The infected individuals were systematically checking car doors and windows, displaying problem-solving abilities that suggested retained intelligence despite their obvious transformation. One of them successfully opened a vehicle door and began methodically searching the interior, while another climbed onto the hood of a truck to scan the area from an elevated position, their movements coordinated and purposeful rather than random and chaotic. Emma whispered her observations about their behavior patterns while Jake live-streamed their escape route to other survivors, creating a network of real-time intelligence that would prove crucial for anyone else trying to navigate the city's infected zones. Their careful retreat through the building's service corridors was interrupted by the arrival of Rebecca Foster, who had somehow made her way from Atlanta General Hospital with a backpack full of medical supplies and invaluable knowledge about the infection's progression through the human body. Her first-hand experience treating bite victims revealed that the transformation process was remarkably consistent, taking approximately 12 to 15 minutes from initial exposure to complete behavioral change, with victims retaining motor functions and basic reasoning abilities while losing all emotional connections to their previous lives. Detective Daniel Mitchell joined their group shortly after, arriving with tactical gear salvaged from abandoned police vehicles and crucial intelligence about weapon caches and safe houses scattered throughout the city, his law enforcement background providing strategic knowledge about Atlanta's infrastructure that complemented Tyler Brooks's construction expertise. Tyler had managed to escape his downtown worksite by using construction equipment to create barriers against infected crowds, and his understanding of building structures immediately proved valuable as he identified an abandoned office complex that offered multiple escape routes, reinforced windows, and defensible choke points. Ashley Coleman's arrival completed their core group, the college student demonstrating remarkable resourcefulness by fashioning improvised weapons from common objects and sharing techniques for creating noisemakers and distraction devices that could redirect infected attention away from human survivors. The abandoned office building they selected as their temporary base seemed ideal until their first night revealed the horrifying truth about infected hunting patterns. The creatures moved in coordinated packs that suggested either retained human intelligence or external control, systematically checking buildings for signs of human habitation. Their monitoring of emergency radio frequencies painted an increasingly grim picture as reports flooded in from major cities worldwide, with London, Tokyo, New York, and Los Angeles all experiencing simultaneous outbreaks that followed identical patterns, confirming Emma's worst fears about coordinated biological warfare. The scientists' preliminary analysis of blood samples collected from infected corpses revealed artificial genetic markers that had no place in natural biology, synthetic proteins that suggested laboratory engineering and deliberate deployment rather than accidental release or natural mutation. Jake's technical skills proved invaluable as he established communication networks with other survivor groups across the city, discovering pockets of resistance in fortified locations ranging from shopping centers to apartment complexes, each group sharing intelligence about infected movement patterns and resource locations. The survivors' first major loss came during what should have been a routine supply run to a nearby pharmacy, when Ashley volunteered to accompany Marcus on what they believed would be a quick in-and-out operation to gather medical supplies that Rebecca desperately needed to treat injured survivors. The mission went catastrophically wrong when they encountered a group of infected that demonstrated advanced tactical thinking, using one member as bait while others positioned themselves to cut off escape routes, resulting in Ashley suffering a severe bite wound that forced Marcus to make an agonizing decision about her fate. Her sacrifice taught the remaining survivors harsh lessons about the new reality they faced, where every decision carried life-or-death consequences and where their enemies possessed capabilities that made traditional zombie survival tactics dangerously inadequate. Emma's growing understanding of the infection's artificial nature, combined with Jake's digital intelligence gathering and Daniel's law enforcement contacts, began to paint a picture of conspiracy that extended far beyond a simple biological attack, suggesting coordination between infected groups and possibly human collaborators. The realization that they were fighting not just transformed humans but potentially an organized enemy with strategic objectives fundamentally changed their approach to survival, shifting their focus from simple evasion to active resistance and intelligence gathering. Rebecca's medical knowledge became crucial as she developed protocols for treating bite wounds and identifying early signs of infection, while Tyler's construction skills enabled them to fortify their position with early warning systems and multiple escape routes that would prove essential in the battles to come. The morning after Ashley's death brought a grim determination to the remaining survivors as Tyler Brooks surveyed their office building with the calculating eye of someone who understood that their temporary shelter needed to become a fortress if they hoped to last another week. Using his construction expertise and salvaged materials from nearby building sites, he began designing a comprehensive defense system that included reinforced barricades at ground level, early warning systems using motion sensors salvaged from security equipment, and multiple escape routes through connected buildings that would allow them to retreat without being trapped in a single location. Marcus Rodriguez organized the group's daily routines around military principles, establishing watch schedules, communication protocols, and combat training sessions that taught Rebecca Foster and Dr. Emma Thompson basic firearms handling and close-quarters combat techniques that their professional backgrounds had never required them to learn. Jake Williams worked tirelessly to establish communication networks with other survivor groups scattered throughout Atlanta, his technical skills proving invaluable as he created encrypted radio channels that allowed isolated communities to share intelligence about infected movement patterns, resource locations, and potential threats from hostile human survivors. The teenagers' digital mapping project revealed a complex landscape of survival, with some areas of the city remaining under tenuous human control while others had become hunting grounds for increasingly organized packs of infected that seemed to follow strategic patterns rather than random wandering. Emma's research into the infection continued around the clock as she analyzed samples and data, making the disturbing discovery that the transformed humans appeared to be organized by what she termed alpha, infected individuals who retained higher cognitive functions and seemed capable of directing the behavior of lesser infected through methods she couldn't yet understand. Her scientific training demanded empirical evidence, but field observation suggested these alpha creatures could coordinate complex hunting strategies and even adapt their tactics based on survivor defensive measures, making them far more dangerous than any natural predator. Rebecca's medical station became the heart of their operation as she documented different stages of infection progression, searching for patterns that might reveal weaknesses or potential treatments while treating injuries suffered during increasingly frequent encounters with infected scouts probing their defenses. Her nursing background proved invaluable as she trained other survivors in basic first aid and emergency medical procedures, knowledge that became crucial when Daniel Mitchell returned from a scouting mission with information about a military unit that had established a fortified position at Roosevelt High School several miles across the city. The detectives' intelligence-gathering efforts revealed that the government had lost control of most major population centers, with military units operating independently and often competing with civilian survivor groups for the same scarce resources, creating a complex political landscape that required careful navigation. Contact with the military unit led by Captain Sarah Rodriguez provided both opportunities and complications, as the soldiers possessed heavy weapons and tactical training but operated under orders to establish green zones for government personnel that didn't necessarily include civilian survivors. Jake's communication intercepts revealed radio chatter between the military unit and other government facilities, suggesting that some level of organized authority still existed but was primarily focused on preserving key personnel and infrastructure rather than general population rescue operations. The survivors also made contact with a group of university researchers holed up in the Georgia Tech campus science building, led by Professor Michael Chen, who claimed to be making progress on understanding the infection's mechanism and potentially developing countermeasures, though their work required resources and equipment that were increasingly difficult to obtain. However, not all survivor encounters proved positive, as Daniel's reconnaissance missions revealed that some human groups had devolved into banditry and violence, viewing other survivors as competition for limited supplies rather than potential allies in the fight against their common enemy. The most disturbing discovery came when a group led by a former gang leader named Rodriguez attempted to raid their building, forcing the survivors into their first significant combat with other humans who had embraced violence and predation as survival strategies. Tyler's defensive preparations proved their worth during a major infected assault that tested every system he had constructed, as nearly 50 transformed humans attacked their building in coordinated waves that suggested battlefield-level tactical planning. The infected demonstrated new abilities during the assault, using simple tools to probe defenses and even attempting to create diversions while other groups attacked from different directions, behavior that challenged every assumption about their cognitive limitations. Marcus coordinated their defense with military precision, directing covering fire while Rebecca treated wounded defenders and Jake maintained communication with allied survivor groups who provided intelligence about infected movements in adjacent areas. Emma made crucial observations during the battle about infected behavior patterns, noting that the alpha creatures directing the assault remained safely back from the fighting while using what appeared to be gesture-based communication to coordinate their forces. The successful defense of their position came at significant cost in ammunition and supplies, forcing the survivors to implement stricter rationing protocols while Tyler began planning modifications to their fortifications based on lessons learned from the assault. The aftermath of the battle revealed evidence that the infected had been conducting reconnaissance of their position for several days before the attack, suggesting a level of strategic planning that made their enemies far more formidable than initially realized. Jake's analysis of communication intercepts during the battle revealed that some infected groups were being coordinated by external radio signals, implying that human collaborators might be directing infected forces against survivor settlements. The discovery raised terrifying questions about the true nature of their enemies and the possibility that they faced not just transformed humans but an organized conspiracy that included living people working to ensure humanity's defeat. The urgent need for answers drove Dr. Emma Thompson to propose what everyone knew was essentially a suicide mission, infiltrating the CDC's main research facility to retrieve critical data about the outbreak's origins and potential countermeasures, despite intelligence reports indicating that the building was now surrounded by some of the most aggressive infected packs in the city. Marcus Rodriguez spent 2 days planning the operation with military precision, studying building schematics that Jake Williams had accessed through hacked city databases while Daniel Mitchell gathered intelligence about infected patrol patterns around the facility from his network of police contacts still operating in scattered safe zones. The mission team would be small and fast-moving, consisting of Emma for her security clearances and scientific knowledge, Marcus for tactical leadership, and Jake for his technical skills in bypassing electronic security systems that might still be operational despite the chaos engulfing the city. Tyler Brooks worked around the clock to prepare specialized equipment for the mission, including cutting tools for breaching reinforced doors, portable communication devices for maintaining contact with their base, and improvised explosive devices that could create diversions or emergency escape routes if their infiltration went catastrophically wrong. Rebecca Foster prepared emergency medical kits and established protocols for treating potential bite wounds or other injuries that the team might sustain during their dangerous journey through some of Atlanta's most heavily infected territory. The mission launched before dawn when infected activity typically reached its lowest point, though Emma's research suggested that this pattern might be artificially maintained by whatever intelligence was coordinating their enemies' movements throughout the city. The team's approach to the CDC facility revealed evidence of systematic destruction that went far beyond random infected vandalism, with specific laboratories and data storage areas showing signs of deliberate sabotage that suggested human involvement in covering up the outbreak's true origins. Jake's technical expertise proved crucial as he bypassed multiple security systems and accessed computer terminals that revealed classified communications between CDC officials and unknown parties discussing biological warfare countermeasures and population reduction protocols that painted a horrifying picture of premeditated genocide disguised as pandemic response. Emma's security clearance allowed access to restricted database files that documented the development of weaponized pathogens designed to target specific genetic markers, explaining why certain ethnic groups seemed to show higher infection rates while others demonstrated apparent natural immunity to the transformed virus. The most damaging evidence came from encrypted email exchanges between high-level government officials and international conspirators discussing coordinated release points across major population centers, with specific references to Phase 2 operations that implied the initial outbreak was merely the beginning of a larger plan to reshape global civilization. Marcus coordinated the team's movements through the facility while maintaining radio contact with Tyler, who monitored infected movement patterns around their position using improvised surveillance equipment that detected the approaching danger before it became visible. The discovery of live test subjects in the facility's basement laboratories revealed the full horror of the conspiracy, as the team found evidence that researchers had been conducting experiments on both infected and uninfected humans to refine the virus's effects and develop methods for controlling transformed individuals through electromagnetic manipulation. Rebecca's medical knowledge became crucial when Jake intercepted radio transmissions using specific frequencies that seemed to cause behavioral changes in nearby infected, leading to Emma's breakthrough realization that the transformed humans were being controlled remotely through implanted devices that responded to precisely calibrated radio signals. Daniel's investigation of government safe rooms within the facility uncovered classified documents detailing evacuation procedures for selected personnel, revealing that certain officials had received advance warning about the outbreak and had been relocated to secure facilities before the first infections occurred. The team's extraction from the facility became a running battle through corridors filled with infected that seemed to respond to their presence with unprecedented coordination, suggesting that their infiltration had triggered some kind of alert system that drew enemies from throughout the surrounding area. Tyler's defensive preparations at their base proved essential as infected forces launched simultaneous attacks on multiple survivor settlements across the city, apparently attempting to prevent any groups from sharing intelligence about the conspiracy they had uncovered. Emma's analysis of the retrieved data revealed that the infection had been designed with built-in limitations that would allow its creators to maintain control over the transformed population, effectively creating a slave army that could be directed against remaining human survivors while preserving selected individuals for whatever purposes the conspirators had planned. Jake's technical skills enabled him to trace the origin of control signals to a heavily fortified facility on the outskirts of Atlanta, though intelligence gathered from intercepted communications suggested that similar command centers operated in major cities worldwide as part of a coordinated global operation. The discovery that some survivor groups had been infiltrated by enemy agents explained how infected forces always seemed to know the locations of human settlements and the timing of supply runs, creating an atmosphere of paranoia that threatened to destroy the trust necessary for effective resistance. Rebecca's medical research using the retrieved CDC data led to her shocking discovery that the infection could be temporarily reversed using specific electromagnetic frequencies, though the process required precise calibration and sophisticated equipment that would be nearly impossible to obtain under current conditions. Marcus faced the terrible realization that their enemies possessed resources, organization, and strategic planning capabilities that made conventional resistance almost hopeless, forcing him to consider whether their small group's survival was worth the risk of continuing their fight against such overwhelming opposition. The mission's success in gathering crucial intelligence came at a devastating cost when Daniel failed to return from a reconnaissance mission near the command facility, leaving the survivors uncertain whether he had been killed, captured, or worse, converted into one of their enemies through whatever enhanced transformation processes the conspirators had developed. The discovery of Daniel Mitchell's abandoned police radio 3 miles from the command facility sent chills through the remaining survivors, but what truly shattered their sense of security was Jake Williams' interception of encrypted transmissions that revealed some government officials were actively collaborating with the outbreak's orchestrators, trading human territories and survivor locations in exchange for guaranteed safety in underground bunkers. Emma Thompson's analysis of the intercepted communications revealed a horrifying truth. Certain high-ranking officials had not only received advance warning of the biological attack but had helped coordinate the selection of release points to maximize casualties while preserving key infrastructure for post-outbreak control. Marcus Rodriguez struggled to maintain group cohesion as paranoia spread through their ranks, with every new survivor they encountered now viewed as a potential spy or collaborator rather than a fellow human being fighting for survival in an increasingly hostile world. The situation deteriorated further when Tyler Brooks discovered sophisticated surveillance equipment hidden within their fortified building, devices that had been feeding their location, defensive capabilities, and supply levels to unknown parties for weeks, explaining how infected attacks always seemed perfectly timed to exploit their weaknesses. Rebecca Foster's medical research suffered a devastating setback when saboteurs infiltrated their makeshift laboratory during the night, destroying months of crucial data about electromagnetic frequency treatments and stealing irreplaceable samples that had been painstakingly collected from infected subjects during dangerous field operations. Jake's monitoring systems detected massive infected movements coordinated across the entire metropolitan area, with thousands of transformed humans relocating from random positions into strategic formations that suggested someone with advanced military training was directing their deployment against remaining survivor settlements. The teenagers' technical expertise uncovered evidence that the infected were receiving coordination signals from multiple transmission sources, indicating a sophisticated command and control network that extended far beyond the single facility they had discovered outside Atlanta. Emma made a breakthrough discovery that the infection could be weaponized even further through additional treatments that enhance strength, speed, and cognitive abilities, creating super-infected individuals who retain strategic thinking capabilities while losing all human empathy or moral restraints. Her research revealed that these enhanced infected were being deployed as field commanders to direct standard infected forces, explaining the increasingly sophisticated tactics being used against human survivor groups throughout the region. Marcus faced his greatest leadership challenge when several members of their allied groups advocated for abandoning all rescue operations and focusing solely on their own survival, arguing that every mission to save other humans compromised their security and depleted resources they couldn't afford to lose. The moral debate split their community as some survivors insisted that maintaining their humanity required continuing to help others, while pragmatists argued that selective survival was the only realistic strategy for ensuring any humans would be alive to rebuild civilization after the crisis ended. Rebecca's medical work was complicated by her discovery that the infection could remain dormant in apparently healthy individuals for extended periods before activation through specific trigger signals, meaning that some seemingly immune survivors were actually carriers of a weaponized strain designed to infiltrate and destroy resistant communities from within. Tyler's construction of enhanced fortifications faced its greatest test when waves of enhanced infected, led by highly intelligent alpha creatures, launched coordinated assaults using complex strategies that included diversionary attacks, siege equipment fashioned from abandoned vehicles, and tactical formations that demonstrated sophisticated military planning. The attacks revealed that their enemies had been studying human defensive techniques and developing countermeasures, with each assault becoming more effective as the infected leadership learned from previous failures and adapted their strategies accordingly. Jake discovered a black market operation where desperate survivors were trading crucial intelligence about defensive positions and supply caches to collaborator networks in exchange for temporary protection from infected attacks, creating an economy of betrayal that weakened human resistance efforts. The most devastating blow came when Emma uncovered evidence that their trusted contact at the university research facility, Professor Michael Chen, had been reporting their activities to collaborator networks while feeding them false information about potential cure developments to keep them focused on futile research directions. The betrayal cost them their primary research base when infected forces launched a perfectly coordinated assault that exploited detailed intelligence about their defenses, escape routes, and the timing of their guard rotations, forcing the survivors to abandon months of preparation and irreplaceable scientific equipment. Marcus organized multiple simultaneous missions to rescue captured scientists, destroy collaborator communication networks, and secure samples needed for Emma's cure research, but the operations revealed how extensively their movements had been monitored and predicted by enemy intelligence networks. Tyler's engineering skills proved crucial as he designed mobile fortifications and siege equipment from salvaged construction machinery, preparing for large-scale confrontations with both enhanced infected forces and well-equipped collaborator military units that possessed government-issued weapons and vehicles. Rebecca made the disturbing discovery that some individuals claiming to be immune to infection were actually carrying dormant strains programmed to activate simultaneously across multiple survivor communities, potentially devastating human resistance through coordinated internal attacks that would be impossible to defend against. The revelation that enemy agents had infiltrated their group became undeniable when Jake traced the source of leaked intelligence to someone within their inner circle, though identifying the traitor proved nearly impossible as suspicion fell on multiple individuals who had access to sensitive information. Emma's research into the enemy's ultimate objectives revealed their true plan, reducing the global population to approximately 500 million individuals who would be maintained as a controlled servant class, with the remainder of humanity either eliminated through the infection or transformed into a manageable workforce under direct neural control. The scope of the conspiracy became clear as intercepted communications revealed similar operations occurring simultaneously across every continent, with local resistance movements facing identical challenges of infiltration, betrayal, and technologically enhanced infected forces directed by international collaborator networks that had been planning this operation for years. With their primary base destroyed and Professor Chen's betrayal exposing the full extent of enemy infiltration, the surviving members of Marcus Rodriguez's group found themselves operating from abandoned subway tunnels beneath Atlanta, forced to implement security measures so extreme that even basic communication between team members required coded phrases and physical verification protocols. Emma Thompson's scientific research reached a critical breakthrough when her analysis of samples retrieved from the CDC facility revealed that developing an effective cure would require obtaining genetic material from the original infection source, meaning they would need to infiltrate what intelligence suggested was the most heavily defended facility in the southeastern United States. The revelation that Daniel Mitchell might still be alive came through intercepted transmissions indicating that captured survivors were being held at the primary research facility for experimentation, giving the team a dual motivation for what everyone understood would likely be their final mission. Marcus spent sleepless nights coordinating with previously hostile survivor groups scattered throughout the region, using Jake Williams' encrypted communication networks to forge desperate alliances with communities that had been fighting each other for resources just weeks earlier. The unification process required delicate negotiations as each group demanded guarantees about resource distribution and leadership roles in any combined resistance effort, with trust remaining fragile due to the constant threat of infiltration by collaborator agents. Tyler Brooks adapted his construction expertise to an entirely different challenge, designing mobile siege equipment and portable fortifications from salvaged materials that could be rapidly deployed and abandoned as their guerrilla operations required constant movement to avoid detection by increasingly sophisticated enemy surveillance systems. Rebecca Foster's medical work took on new urgency as she developed field-deployable versions of her electromagnetic frequency treatments, creating portable devices that could potentially reverse infection in recently transformed individuals during combat operations, though the equipment's effectiveness remained largely theoretical due to limited testing opportunities. Jake's technical prowess became their most valuable asset as he developed sophisticated digital warfare tools, including a computer virus designed to infiltrate and disrupt the enemy's communication networks, potentially freeing thousands of infected individuals from remote control while creating chaos in collaborator command structures. The teenagers' analysis of enemy communication patterns revealed that their opponents operated on predictable schedules, suggesting that a coordinated multi-pronged attack during shift changes might provide their only opportunity to penetrate the facility's defenses and extract both the cure materials and any surviving prisoners. Emma's preparation of multiple backup copies of her research data involved distributing information to allied survivor groups across 3 states, ensuring that even if their primary team was eliminated, other scientists could continue working toward a cure using the knowledge they had sacrificed so much to obtain. The complexity of coordinating simultaneous diversionary attacks across a 100-mile radius required Marcus to delegate authority to local commanders he had never met in person, trusting them with detailed intelligence about enemy positions and defensive capabilities while hoping that none of these new allies were actually collaborator double agents. Tyler's engineering challenges multiplied as he attempted to create specialized equipment for breaching the research facility's reinforced walls and underground bunkers, working with limited materials and tools while enemy patrols made it increasingly dangerous to salvage supplies from construction sites and military depots. Rebecca discovered that some of the enhanced infected retained enough of their original personalities to be reasoned with under specific circumstances, leading to her dangerous experiments with communication techniques that might allow them to gather intelligence or even recruit allies from among their transformed enemies. The moral implications of potentially condemning infected individuals who might be saved weighed heavily on Emma as she realized that obtaining cure samples might require destroying the facility and everyone inside it, including prisoners who could theoretically be restored to humanity if they could develop better treatment methods. Jake's digital infiltration revealed that the enemy's research had progressed to creating hybrid human-infected individuals who retained full human intelligence while possessing enhanced physical capabilities, suggesting that some collaborators were voluntarily submitting to controlled transformation to gain advantages over normal humans. Marcus coordinated reconnaissance missions that revealed the facility was protected not only by enhanced infected and collaborator military units but also by automated defense systems that could distinguish between authorized personnel and intruders using biometric scanning and behavioral analysis technologies. The intelligence gathered indicated that the facility contained not just research laboratories but also housing for thousands of collaborator families and government officials, creating ethical dilemmas about civilian casualties that complicated their mission planning and forced them to consider the moral costs of their desperate gambit. Tyler's siege preparations included contingency plans for destroying key infrastructure to prevent the enemy from relocating their research or evacuating important personnel, though such actions would likely result in massive casualties among both combatants and non-combatants trapped within the facility. Rebecca's medical analysis of intelligence reports about the facility's layout suggested that the original infection samples were stored in heavily shielded laboratories designed to contain biological weapons, meaning that any damage to the containment systems could potentially release pathogens that would make their current crisis seem trivial by comparison. The team's final preparations revealed how much they had changed from the frightened civilians who had first banded together during the initial outbreak, as each member demonstrated skills and determination that would have been unimaginable before they were forced to confront humanity's darkest hour. Emma's scientific objectivity was tested by the knowledge that success might require sacrificing potential allies and destroying research that could benefit humanity in ways they couldn't currently imagine, forcing her to balance immediate survival needs against long-term consequences for human civilization. Jake's youth provided both advantages and disadvantages as his adaptability and technical intuition proved invaluable, while his lack of experience with life-and-death decisions sometimes left him unprepared for the emotional weight of choices that could determine whether humanity survived as a free species or became enslaved to the ambitions of those who had orchestrated their current nightmare. The assault on the enemy's primary research facility began at 0300 hours on a moonless night when Marcus Rodriguez gave the signal that launched coordinated attacks across a 50-mile radius, each diversionary strike designed to draw enemy forces away from their primary objective while Jake Williams unleashed his digital virus into the facility's computer networks. Emma Thompson crouched in the back of Tyler Brooks' armored construction vehicle, her heart pounding as she clutched the portable storage devices that would hopefully contain humanity's salvation, while Rebecca Foster checked her electromagnetic frequency equipment one final time before they breached the outer perimeter. The facility's defenses proved even more formidable than intelligence reports had suggested, with automated turrets that tracked movement patterns and energy shields that deflected conventional explosives, forcing Tyler to improvise solutions using construction equipment in ways that would have been impossible without his years of experience working with heavy machinery under dangerous conditions. Jake's virus succeeded in disrupting enemy communications across the region, causing chaos among infected hordes that suddenly found themselves freed from remote control, though this victory came with the unintended consequence of making the creatures more unpredictable and individually dangerous as they reverted to purely instinctual hunting behavior. The diversionary attacks achieved their primary objective of drawing away the facility's mobile defenders, but Marcus received desperate radio transmissions from Allied groups reporting massive casualties as they faced enemy forces equipped with weapons and tactics far beyond what intelligence had predicted. Inside the facility, the team discovered laboratories that contained horrors beyond their worst nightmares, thousands of test subjects in various stages of transformation, hybrid creatures that combined human intelligence with enhanced physical capabilities, and research data documenting experiments in genetic modification that revealed the true scope of the conspirators' ambitions for reshaping humanity. Emma's scientific training helped her navigate the complex laboratory systems, but what she found challenged every ethical principle she had maintained throughout her career. Evidence that some researchers had voluntarily submitted to controlled infection processes to gain enhanced abilities, creating a new subspecies of human that viewed unmodified people as inferior beings destined for slavery or elimination. Rebecca's medical expertise proved crucial when they encountered infected individuals who retained enough of their original personalities to communicate, providing intelligence about the facility's layout and security measures while begging for death rather than continued existence as unwilling servants to the enemy's cause. The team's infiltration became increasingly desperate as Tyler's breach charges revealed that the original infection samples were stored in a laboratory protected by biocontainment systems that would release lethal pathogens if tampered with incorrectly, meaning that one mistake could unleash something far worse than their current crisis. Jake discovered that the facility's computer systems contained detailed records of similar operations worldwide, confirming that Atlanta was just one node in a global network of research installations working to perfect technologies for population control and human modification on an unprecedented scale. Marcus coordinated their extraction while engaging enemy forces that included not only enhanced infected and collaborator military units but also prototype combat robots that demonstrated artificial intelligence capabilities that seemed decades ahead of known technology, suggesting that the conspiracy had access to advanced research that governments had kept hidden from public knowledge. The mission's success hung in the balance when Emma was forced to choose between securing samples that might complete her cure and ensuring the team's survival, as enemy reinforcements converged on their position with overwhelming firepower that threatened to trap them in the very facility they had fought so hard to penetrate. Tyler's demolition expertise became their salvation as he rigged the facility's power systems to create cascading failures that would destroy the research while providing cover for their escape, though the process required him to remain behind to manually trigger the sequence at the cost of his own life. Rebecca made a desperate attempt to treat recently infected prisoners using her electromagnetic equipment, achieving partial success with some subjects while confirming that others had progressed too far in their transformation to be restored to full humanity, forcing her to make agonizing decisions about which individuals could be saved and which were beyond help. Jake's technical skills enabled him to download terabytes of research data before the facility's destruction, including detailed information about other installations and the identities of collaborator leaders who had orchestrated the global operation, intelligence that would prove crucial for any future resistance efforts. The team's extraction became a running battle through corridors filled with hybrid creatures that possessed human tactical intelligence combined with enhanced strength and speed, creating enemies that could anticipate their strategies while possessing physical capabilities that made direct confrontation nearly suicidal. Emma managed to secure the genetic samples needed for her cure, but the cost included not only Tyler's heroic sacrifice but also the realization that developing and distributing an effective treatment would require resources and time they might not have, especially with enemy forces regrouping for what intelligence suggested would be a final assault on all remaining human settlements. Marcus led the surviving team members through a maze of facility tunnels that Tyler had identified before his death, using construction blueprints to navigate passages that emergency systems were sealing as the building's automated protocols attempted to contain the damage from their sabotage. The facility's destruction created a massive explosion that could be seen for miles, sending a signal to Allied groups across the region that their desperate gambit had succeeded, though the celebration was tempered by the knowledge that they had only struck one facility in a global network that included hundreds of similar installations. Jake's virus continued causing chaos in enemy communication networks even after their escape, freeing infected populations across multiple states while disrupting collaborator coordination efforts, though the long-term consequences of this digital warfare remained uncertain as both sides adapted to the new tactical landscape. Rebecca's treatment of rescued prisoners revealed that some individuals could be partially restored to humanity while retaining enhanced physical capabilities, raising questions about the ethics of using enemy modifications for their own purposes and the possibility of creating their own enhanced human defenders. The mission's conclusion left the surviving team members forever changed by what they had witnessed and done, with each carrying physical and psychological scars that would affect their leadership of the broader resistance movement that their actions had helped inspire across the remaining free territories of what had once been the United States. 3 months after Tyler Brooks' heroic sacrifice enabled their escape from the enemy research facility, Dr. Emma Thompson worked tirelessly in a converted warehouse laboratory, synthesizing the cure that had cost so many lives to obtain, while survivors from across the southeastern United States arrived daily seeking treatment for infected family members and friends they had hidden for months in desperate hope of eventual salvation. The genetic samples retrieved from the facility had proven sufficient to develop an effective treatment, though Emma's research revealed disturbing complexities. The cure worked best on recently infected individuals, required precise administration protocols, and had a limited shelf life that created logistical challenges for mass distribution across territories still contested by enemy forces. Marcus Rodriguez found himself thrust into a leadership role he had never sought, coordinating military operations against remaining collaborator strongholds while establishing new governmental structures for the growing population of liberated territories, his Marine training proving invaluable as he balanced the immediate demands of warfare with the long-term needs of rebuilding civilization. Jake Williams' digital virus had exceeded all expectations, not only disrupting enemy communications but creating cascading failures in collaborator networks worldwide, as reports filtered in from international contacts about similar resistance movements gaining ground in Europe, Asia, and South America, suggesting that their desperate gambit had catalyzed global opposition to the conspiracy. The cure's effectiveness varied dramatically among different patients, with some individuals making complete recoveries within days while others retained partial modifications that left them stronger and faster than normal humans, creating new social dynamics as communities struggled to integrate these enhanced survivors into their rebuilding efforts. Rebecca Foster established the first comprehensive medical training program for the post-outbreak world, teaching dozens of volunteers the skills needed to administer the cure safely while treating the complex psychological trauma that affected both restored individuals and uninfected survivors who had endured months of horror and loss. The electromagnetic frequency treatments she had developed proved crucial for helping restored individuals overcome the neural conditioning that had made them susceptible to remote control, though the process required careful monitoring as some patients experienced severe psychological reactions when memories of their infected period returned fully intact. Marcus coordinated the establishment of treatment centers in fortified locations across the region, each staffed with medical personnel trained by Rebecca and protected by security teams that had learned hard lessons about defending fixed installations against both infected attacks and collaborator raids. The distribution network required constant vigilance as enemy agents attempted to sabotage supply convoys and corrupt treatment stocks, leading to the development of sophisticated authentication protocols that Jake designed to prevent contaminated or counterfeit cure samples from reaching vulnerable populations. Emma's continued research revealed methods for immunizing healthy individuals against future bioweapon attacks, though the prophylactic treatment required rare materials that could only be obtained from heavily defended enemy facilities, creating new objectives for ongoing military operations against collaborator strongholds. The discovery that their victory in Atlanta was part of a larger global awakening provided hope tempered by the sobering realization that international conspirator networks remained active, requiring constant vigilance and coordination with resistance movements in other countries to prevent the reorganization of enemy operations. Jake's analysis of captured enemy communications revealed that their success had forced the conspiracy's leadership to abandon their original timeline, but also suggested that fallback plans included even more dangerous bioweapons that could potentially wipe out all human life if the conspirators decided they could not maintain control over the situation. Rebecca's medical work with restored infected individuals provided crucial intelligence about enemy research programs, as many patients retained fragmented memories of their time in collaborator facilities, revealing locations of hidden installations and details about ongoing research projects that posed continued threats to human survival. The integration of enhanced individuals into survivor communities created both opportunities and challenges, as their physical capabilities made them valuable for dangerous missions while their psychological trauma and altered appearances sometimes caused fear and resentment among unmodified humans who struggled with their own survivor guilt and prejudices. Marcus established diplomatic relations with military units and civilian governments that had survived in isolated regions, creating a loose confederation of free territories that coordinated defense efforts while maintaining local autonomy, a balance that proved essential for maintaining unity among diverse communities with different priorities and resources. Emma's work expanded beyond cure development to include forensic analysis of enemy research data, uncovering evidence of the conspiracy's true origins and long-term objectives that would be crucial for preventing similar attacks in the future, though the scope of the documentation required teams of researchers working around the clock to process and understand the implications. The establishment of new communities based on lessons learned during the crisis emphasized cooperation, preparedness, and the fundamental value of human life, with constitutional frameworks that balanced individual rights with collective security needs while maintaining democratic principles that had been abandoned by the conspiracy's authoritarian vision for human society. Jake's technological expertise became the foundation for new communication networks that connected survivor communities across continents, enabling the coordination of resistance efforts while developing early warning systems that could detect signs of renewed conspirator activity before it reached critical stages. Rebecca's medical innovations led to the development of rapid response protocols for treating future bioweapon attacks, creating stockpiles of countermeasures and training programs that would help humanity respond more effectively to similar threats, though the psychological impact of constant vigilance created its own challenges for communities trying to rebuild normal lives. As winter approached the first anniversary of the initial outbreak, Marcus stood atop the observation deck of their primary settlement, watching construction crews work on new housing for the steadily growing population of survivors and restored individuals, reflecting on how the horror that had nearly destroyed humanity had ultimately revealed both their species' terrible vulnerability and their extraordinary capacity for resilience, adaptation, and hope. The cure had given them victory over the immediate threat, but Emma's research suggested that true security would require generations of vigilance, scientific advancement, and international cooperation to ensure that never again would small groups of powerful individuals be able to hold humanity's survival hostage to their megalomaniacal ambitions for global domination.